Alright, so Google has released the API for Google Analytics 4, also known as GA4. The API is still in beta stage, but after using it for a while, I feel like the API is pretty stable to be used in production environment. So in this tutorial, we'll be learning how to automate GA4 reporting using Python. Alright, so Google actually rebuilt the infrastructure for the GA4 API framework. So most of the code that you wrote for Google Analytics 3 will not be working for Google Analytics 4. For the agenda, we have 8 different tasks. So for the first item, it's going to be how to enable GA4 API. Then we're going to create a service account, and as well as to download the service account JSON file. Then we're going to add the GA4 account to the GA4 account list, and also grab the property ID that we're going to be used for our Python script. And as for the Python development, we're going to create a Python virtual environment that is isolated environment, specifically just for GA4 development. Next, we'll install the Python package that I wrote to simplify the reporting process, and some other Python libraries that we'll be using to create different reports. Then I want to briefly go over the documentation. I won't go over everything, just the stuff that we'll need to take into consideration when we use the API. Then we're going to dive into the Python script development. So number 8 is optional. So for this one, it's going to be a demo showcasing a desktop application that I built based on GA4's API and Excel's Python library. So long story short, I hope by the end of this tutorial, you'll be able to navigate the API documentation as well as how to write your own Python script to automate your GA4 reporting. Now let's start with item number 1, which is to enable Google Analytics 4 API. Right, so here I've got to open the tab. So I want to navigate to console.cloud.google.com. Right, so on the home page, you want to click on navigation menu, then go to APIs and services, then want to click on library. So here we want to search for Google Analytics data. It should be the first item from the list. Then click on Google Analytics Data API. So here we want to make sure that this API service is enabled. Alright, so let's move on to item number 2, which is to create a service account and download the service account file. Alright, so here I'm going to actually jump to step 4 first, because when we download the file, we need to have a place to save the file. Now, navigate to a folder where you want to create a folder that to be your Python environment for the GA4 development. So I'm going to use my Python VMV folder. So this is going to be my project folder that store all the projects. Now, launch the terminal. I'm going to use a bash. And to create a Python virtual environment, I want to use the command python-m. M stands for module, followed by the module name, venv. And for the environment, I'm going to name this as GA4_demo. And that should create a folder named GA4demo. And it's going to be the folder that contains all the necessary files to be used to operate as an independent environment used by Python. Alright, so we have finished item 4 as well. Now let's go back to item 2. Now to create a service account, we want to click on navigation menu. Then we'll go to APIs and services again. And this time we're going to click on credentials. On the top, click on create credentials. And here we want to choose service account. Alright, so we need to give our service account name, and I'll name the account GA4_demo. And I'll auto-populate the service account ID. Now click on create and continue. For step 2, we need to assign a role to this account. And for this exercise, I'm going to choose basic, and I'll assign the owner role to give this account full permission to use all the services. Now click on continue. So at this point, when finished, create the account. Now click on done to finish the setup. So here's the GA4 demo account that I created. And notice that here we have an email address assigned to this account. Now open Notepad. I'm going to copy the email address to the Notepad. Now click on the account. On the top, click on keys. I want to download the service account file to be used to authenticate our access or connection in GA4. Alright, so here click on add key. I want to create a new set of key. And for the key type, choose JSON and create. Alright, so I'm going to save the file in the project folder that I just created from step 4. For the service account file, I'm going to name this as SA GA4_demo and save. Okay, so for step 3, we need to add the account to our GA4 permission list. So navigate to your GA4's platform. Now choose the property that I want the account to have access. And for GA4, I only have one property, so I'm going to choose my property. On the select property, click on admin. Alright, so there are two things we need to do here. We need to grab the property's ID. It will be under account settings, then go to property settings. Alright, so here on the top right hand corner, you should see your property ID. I'm going to copy this property ID to a notepad. Then I'll go back. Then I'll click on account access management. On the top right corner, click on this add symbol. And here I want to choose add users. Or you can choose add a user group if you want to add multiple users that are assigned to a particular group. Alright, so go back to a notepad and grab the service account's email address. And copy the email address to the email addresses field. Alright, so I'm going to uncheck notify new users by email. And for the role, I'm going to choose editor since I don't want to have this account to have permission to be able to modify some of the settings. And for everything else, I'm going to leave them as default. And click on add. Alright, so we have officially added the service account to the users list. Alright, so we have finished step 1 to step 4. Now let's go ahead and install the required libraries. Now go back to the project folder, or the Python virtual environment that we just created. In this case will be GA4_demo. Right, so I still have my terminal activated. So I'm going to navigate to the account. So here I'm using bash, so I need to use the command source followed by the file path, and it's going to be scripts/active, and they'll activate the environment. If I'm using PowerShell or Windows terminal, then it's going to be scripts/active. So basically you want to run the file directly. This should be, I think it's going to be / for Windows terminal. So for Windows terminal, it's going to be scripts/active. So I wrote this Python package, and I named the package JJ Data Connector. So basically, I created this package to allow me to simplify reporting and data extraction process from Salesforce, Google Search Console, and Google Analytics 4. And I'll be adding more data sources in the future. But for now, those are the three data sources that we can connect to using this Python package. Alright, so to install the library, so I want to grab the GitHub repositories link. And I'll post the link in the description below, so you can just copy and paste. Alright, so going back to the terminal, and to install the Python library, I want to type pip install git plus followed by the GitHub's address. And there are two more libraries that I want to install. One is the pandas library, and one is the OpenPyXL library, which is the Excel engine that Panda uses. And to install pandas, it's going to be pip install pandas. Alright, so the pandas library allows you to manipulate data and to simplify file exporting tasks. So if you want to export a data set as a CSV file or Excel file, even a JSON file, then it's going to be really easy to do using pandas library. Now I can close the terminal and move on to the next task. Now let's go over the documentation. Alright, so if you want to get more information regarding the GA4's API, then want to look for Google Analytics 4 Data API, which I'll link the link in the description below. Now if we look at the API, so the API is still in beta stage as I mentioned before. And if I expand the properties, we have 7 different methods that are tied to the GA4 API. And for this tutorial, we'll only be using run report method, which is the core method the connector uses. Now let's look at the parameters belong to the run report method. Alright, so when we use the run report method, we need to provide the properties ID. And to configure the report, so here are some of the things that we can provide to the request body JSON representation. It took me about, I think about a week to get pretty comfortable using the API. And some of the fields are required, some are not, and some of the fields are redundant. So for example, I have never reused dimension filter and matrix filter, these two fields, just because I can directly filter the information using pandas package, as well as the metric aggregations field. So for the scopes, you don't actually have to worry about providing a scope. The connector actually took care of everything for you. And that's everything I want to cover for the run report method, just to show you what fields we have. Now to run a GA4 report, so basically when you run a GA4 report, we're providing a list of a variety of dimensions and metrics. So if we go to guides on the fundamentals, API dimensions and matrices, and here's a list of available dimensions and matrices we can provide to be included in our report. And it's the same page as this one here. Actually, no. So this is the overview summary page of the analytics data API, which I'll let you to go to the information on your own. Alright, so that leads us to step 7, and which is the most important part of this tutorial, to write the Python script. I'll be using VS Code to write the Python script. Now name the file demo.py. Alright, so from the import statement, here let me increase the font size. Oh, and one more thing. So I need to activate the environment. And because I just created the environment, so if I look at my virtual environment list, I can see that GA4 is not available on this list. So I need to manually add the environment to my virtual environment list. So I'm going to click on Enter Interpret Path. Then click on Find to select the file. Want to navigate to the Python environment folder. Then go into Scripts. And want to select python.exe file. And select Interpreter. And if I print these two objects, you're going to see that we're going to get two sets of set objects. So these are going to be all the available matrices items and dimensions items that we can supply to the reporting parameters. Alright, so here we need to set the Google application credentials environment variable to link to the service account file. So here I'm typing os.environ followed by the environment variable name, Google application credentials, followed by the service account file path. Then I'm going to create a variable called property ID. Then I'll go back to my notepad and copy paste the property ID and assign the property ID to the property ID variable. So I'm actually going to show you the demo of the GA4 app right now because there's a couple things I need from the application. Right, so give me a second. Alright, so this is the desktop application I created to help me to run different GA4 reports. Alright, so let me launch the Excel application. And I want to run the report by date and bounce rate. Actually, no, not bounce rate, browser. And this will be bounce rate. Okay, so it's working now. And let me close the other Excel files. Right, so let's say I want to use Python to run a report that contains, for the dimensions, I want to contain date, browser. And for the metrics, let's do bounce rate and total users. And for the date period from, let's do March 1st to March 31st of 2022. Alright, so if I run this report, we'll have 130 rows of data returned. And when I run the Python script, I should expect the same output. And I can close the notepad. Alright, so here I'm going to create my dimensions list, and it's going to be a list object. And inside the list object, I'm grabbing the API name from this page here, from the API dimensions and matrices page. So this is going to be my dimensions parameter items. And for the metrics list, this is going to be total users and bounce rate. So for the GA4 reporting API, we can provide two different sets of date ranges for comparison purpose. Now here, first we need to create an instance of the GA4 report object. So I'll put the line here. GA4 report object instance. And here's our variables. And this will be run the GA4 report. And I'll name the output as report. Now if I go ahead and run this code block. Oh, I forgot to import the libraries. Alright, so if I go ahead and run this code block from line 5 to line 23. Alright, so in the Python script, the file name should match to what I have in the project folder. Now let me recreate the GA4 report object. And this time we're not running into any error. Now if I run line 11 to line 23, and it should successfully create the report object. Now if I print report, and it's going to gives me a list of information that we can extract. Alright, so by looking at the keys from the report's object, and the report object is actually a dictionary object, so we can print the keys. Alright, so from this object we have 5 different keys: headers, rows, row count, metadata, and response. Now response is going to return the actual response from the API code. So if I print report, providing the response key, and it's going to be the API response output. So if you want to directly work with the raw data, you can definitely do that by referencing the response key. And since the connector already simplified the output for you, so it's able to run a script to perform the operation to separate the rows and the headers into 2 different lists. So if I print report, giving the headers key, this should be singular. And here we have the headers labels as a single list. And if I print rows, and it's going to return as a nest list. And that means that we can easily convert this into a data frame object. So we can reference the pandas object, the data frame. And for the counts, this will be report headers. And for the rows, this is going to be data equals to report rows. And I can print the df object to return the GA4 report as a table format. Now going back to the tool. Alright, so here I'm going to set this to 10 rows. And this will be, so here we need to, actually, is that right? And here I need to set the row offset to 0 for now. And I'll show you why in a second. And I'll come out these 2 lines. And let me recreate the data frame object. Alright, so if we look at the run report method, so we have a couple parameters that we can use. So when you run a GA4 report, the maximum rows that you can return per API code is 100,000 rows. But if your report contains more than 100,000 rows, then you will need to use the offset row parameter to skip the row count. So for example, now let's say for the first page, this is going to return the first 1,000 rows. Actually, it's going to return 130 because that's how many records I have in my report. Now let me change this to 10. Now let's say the API limit is 10 rows per API call. Now that'll give us the first 10 records. Now if I need to retrieve the next 10 records, then I need to skip 10 rows by assign 10 to the offset rows parameter. Now if I run the code block, it's going to give me the 10 records on the next page. Now at this point, we can use this code script as a template to play around with different combinations of dimensions and metrics. And I remember that for a GA4 report, you can have up to 25 dimensions select and 50 matrices select. Alright, so let me just do one more example for you, and you can figure out the rest on your own. or you can play around with the script from the link in the description below. And there's no records returned because not all the combinations are compatible. So that's what I meant, that you might have to play around with different combinations of keys to get the result you want. Right, so we can include language along with date and country. Alright, so from this report we have, let's see, let me increase this to 10,000, actually 100,000. And from this tool, it tells me that the total rows returned is 3,104. Oh, and there's one more thing I forgot to mention. So if you're wondering how many records are returned, we can reference the row count key. So based on this report parameter, based on the date range dimension matrix, the total rows is 130. So at this point, we can insert while loops to iterate or to extract the records until 130 records are extracted total. And if we want to insert another date range for comparison, so here we can insert another date range inside the date ranges list. So the date ranges parameter actually accepts a list of tuples. Now if I run the report again, and this time I can't remember what the output looks like, but let me run it to see what happens. Okay, so I remember now. Right, so if I supply two different date ranges, the report is going to insert a column named date range, and under that column is going to insert the label to allow us to filter by the date range parameter value. So in this case, let's say for date range 1, it's going to be March 1st to March 31st. And for date range 2 is going to be April 1st to April 30th. So based on the label, we can basically filter out the records belong to whichever date range that you want to filter by. Right, so to export the report as a CSV file or Excel file, now I want to reference the data frame object. And if we want to export the dataset as a CSV file, we want to use the toCSV method. And here we want to provide the file path to the file. Now name this file demo1.csv. And we have the option to import the index. And I'm going to set the index to false. And to export the table as an Excel file, we want to change the method from toCSV to Excel. And we also need to change the file extension to Excel SX. Now if I go ahead and run these two lines, and saying that OpenPy is not installed. Okay, so I forgot to install the library. So let's do that. So to install OpenPy library, we want to use the command pip install OpenPy Excel. And it's a pretty light package. Now let's go back to the Python script. Now let me go ahead and rerun these two lines. Now if I go back to my project folder, and by looking at just one of the files, and here's the report itself. So we have the date column, browser date range label, and these two are the metrics that we specify in the report. Alright, so this is going to be everything I'm going to cover in this video, and hopefully you guys found this video useful. And I'll put a source code on my website, and I'll link the link in the description below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.